Hello, BookTube. I've got a fun tag for you today. This is the new reader tag. It was created by the tag master himself, Mike at Bibliophile Bookscape. If you don't know who he is, go check him out. He's one of the greats. And this is a tag about reflecting on the early years of your reading life. And I thought that's so cute. And let's start. So, first question: what made you want to become a reader? I really don't know, to be honest. I kind of just fell into reading. I was never a big, TV or movie person. Like, I could honestly name the handful of TV shows and movies I like. Like, when it comes to TV, the only shows I can genuinely say I really love is, Malcolm in the Middle, Murphy Brown randomly. I do love Murphy Brown. What's the other one? Roseanne and, like, MASH. And I Love Lucy. We got to put I Love Lucy there too, and like what The Simpsons. Like that's really it. But I Love Lucy. But and movies, like the only movies I can say I really love is Rocky Horror. I love that one. Um, I'm trying to think now. The Shootist, John Wayne's last movie. I cry every time. Every time I weep. And my all-time favorite movie is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which has the iconic Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. I don't even think they were acting in that film. I think that's just them being chaotic, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, those are like the handful of things I like to watch. In case you didn't know, but I just kind of was gripped by reading young, really young, and never looked back really. And that's it. Number two, what was the first book that made you love reading? And I think the first book that really was like, oh my god, this is what reading could be. For me, was To Kill a Mockingbird. To be honest, I know. I read it for high school. Even in Australia, we have to read To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye and all that. But I read it when I was like 15, and I was silenced. I was couldn't put it down. When it got to the big trial scenes and all that, I was just completely gripped over, and it's still so beautifully written. I feel like, but To Kill a Mockingbird was probably when I was. I've been reading my whole life, but that's the first one. I was like, holy shit, this is reading. But also Dracula too. I read that, had to read that for high school in the same year actually, I think. And instead of doing Shakespeare, we done Dracula, which I do love Dracula. I should reread it this year. And also, I think Moby Dick has to be there too. That was like the first classic, major literature classic that I'd ever read, and I loved it so much, and it's still in my top favorite books of all time. And I'm due for a reread because I want to read it every year. But I've read it probably three times ish by now, maybe I don't know. But those probably are the main three that made me love reading and never looks back. Of course, there's poetry and verse and all that stuff, but those are like the main three novels. Number three, what's one reading habit you're still trying to develop? And I feel like maybe not develop, but maintain. For me, that's just reading diversely, to be honest. Because when I started BookTube, I really niched down, like especially this year. Like outside of like romance, I haven't read that much really. I don't know why I niched down so hard when I made BookTube. When I started BookTube, I think it was just because that's the type of content I wanted to make or something like that. But I think just trying to read more broadly and maintain that, make that consistent. Like I do histories, I do biographies, I do travel writings and all that fun stuff. But to actually keep it consistent and not just binging on one genre and moving on to the next one. I don't know. I need to work on it or whatever. I need more time with it. Number four, what genre surprised you the most? I think in terms of liking, and for me, that's travel writings. To be honest, Voyage of the Beagle. I read that as a teen, and it just blew my mind. You can tell Darwin was pumped to writing this novel, at least writing his travel logs. There is some close competition, I feel like, when it comes to my favorite travel writings. I could put Robert Louis Stevenson's Voyage with a Donkey or Travels with a Donkey. That could be up there. Early Australian, some of like the Matthew Flinders and Arthur Phillip and Watkins Tench and all that stuff. But yeah, travel writings was one of them. I think you do have to weed through the weeds a bit more with travel writings and maybe putting those writings into the context of what was going on with the person who was writing and what they were traveling to and their realizations. I think Maybe we'll unlock, liking them more because they kind of tend to be a bit boring. But I think if you have a good person who edits it with a good introduction, so you know what you're going into, I think they can be just as gripping. I think they're so fun, and I do read a lot of them now, to be honest. Especially now that I'm doing, Oz books and all that, and reading a lot of First Fleet stuff. Other genres, political writing too. I don't know. I don't know why I'm surprised. Maybe fantasy would be another one too. I've never been the biggest fantasy person. I could name on a hand pretty much the only fantasy I've liked. Even Lord Dunsany didn't do much for me really. I love Robin Hobb. She's probably my favorite fantasy author, to be honest. What's his name? Robert Jackson Bennett. I've really enjoyed his writings too. Um, yeah, that's that's really it, to be honest. I never liked Tolkien that much at all. And maybe George R. R. Martin, like his early stuff, I do like that, but that's really it, to be honest. No, I'm trying to look at my shelves, and no, that's really it. Really, my fantasy collection's kind of sad looking at it now. It's very much like um, reading fantasy for someone that doesn't like fantasy. Like that's what my shelves give off, really. Um, Number five. What's one book that intimidated you before you read it? I really don't know, to be honest, because if a book's intimidating and I read it, it should be the job of the author to actually make it entertaining and to, stretch out that hand, if you would, to, give a bit of context and all that stuff. But intimidating, I don't know, really. Um, at least with non-fiction, at least when it comes to classics and fiction, at least that's when I'm a bit ooh. But normally it comes to page length with some of them. I know, but something like Clarissa just haunts me at night. Edward Gibbon haunts me at night. But when it comes to non-fiction, I'm like, girl, it's not that intimidating. It's just history, really. And the more you read, you'll just know more, really. Number six, how has reading changed your life? I don't know. It's just giving me entertainment. It's fun. Reading's fun. I've made some great friends. My only friends. I've pretty much all my friends are readers, and I've purposely made my life like that. So I'm very warped when it comes to how people who just the casual readers and all that stuff, and it's given me so many lovely friends and lovely conversations that I wouldn't have had if I didn't read, really. So it's more of a social thing than anything else. Number seven, what's one reading myth you discovered isn't true? And I discovered this one myth very early on, and that is that just because it's considered a classic doesn't mean that it's good, or at least it's not going to be up your alley. And for me, one of the first classics I read was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and a lot of Dickens, to be honest. I don't think Great Expectations is a bad novel at all. It's really well written at times, but it's one of those novels where it just does nothing for me. I've read it twice. I don't loathe it as much as I do something like Oliver Twist or David Copperfield for me. But it's kind of like 100 Years of Solitude, where I read it and I'm like, that sure is a book. Like that's all I have to say, because it left no impact whatsoever. It was like bland rice. Like it just done nothing for me. And but yeah, there's a couple other classics, but Dickens mostly. At least Great Expectations. That was the first one. I was like, oh my god, this is a classic, and it's not doing anything for me. Even I'd rather go back to Dombey and Son or Bleak House or Hard Times even than Great Expectations. But yeah, that was the first one that showed me not every book that is considered a classic is going to be for you. Number eight. If you could ask an experienced reader one question, what would it be? Um, I don't know really. I don't have any questions. I just talk about books. Fun stuff like that. More than, tell me the wisdom and all that stuff. It would just be like a fun, talk conversations really. And then the last question. What's the reading goal you hope to accomplish next year? I don't have any reading goals for next year. I'm not that far ahead, to be honest. Even this year, I have like no clue. Just keep up with new releases. Like that's it. Do some romance. Do some history books. Very simple. A bit of a mood reader. But that's it. I don't have any goals really. But yeah, that's the new reader tag. If these questions sound fun to you, literally go do it. Go check out Mike's channel. And yeah, it was a really fun tag. Thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.